Just want to make an observation. A few days ago there was a lunar eclipse. Total lunar eclipse maybe. And what I noticed in my living field and the people around me is that lunar eclipse had a strong effect, a noticeable effect. And the observation is that for the last few years there's been a lot of trauma coming to the surface for everyone. Whether you see that as a result of the COVID lockdowns, and the injections, the mental schizophrenia that's hit our societies. But either way, 2020, 21, 22, 23, 24, there were a lot of posts around people feeling really tired, really aching, a lot of mental fog, a lot of confusion, a lot of inhibition, a lot of anxiety, a lot of mental health issues, a lot of feeling depressed and uninspired, overwhelmed. And towards the end of 2024, I heard somebody say that 2025 was going to kick in straight away with a creativity. And then instead of looking back, we're finally going to start to look forward again and be able to imagine the kind of life that you do want to live, rather than looking back at the life you've lived, at the things you didn't want that happened. And sure enough, as soon as 2025 kicked in, there was a lot of creative energy, a lot of inspiration. For myself personally, I've been writing every day since the beginning of January. Pretty much absolutely every day, most days straight from waking from sleep. A little bit of a discipline to choose, to form a habit, to just write. Not judge what I'd write, and not try to finish off what I'd started yesterday. Just write from fresh every day. And in that way to write a new book. Instead of having to go through 20 odd years worth of writings and try and compile and edit and make sense to make a linear narrative to stick between the covers. I thought actually the best way of doing this is just let the mind itself do the editing and write fresh. So I've been doing that. It's a good example of how there is creativity to look forward to a life you did want to live as a way of sustaining oneself in this world, honestly, to make one's own niche instead of trying to find employment with doing what someone else wants, so they make more profit than your wage in a capitalist society. And so fast forward to the last week, where suddenly that lunar eclipse seemed to hit everybody out of the blue with the tired feelings, with the suddenly snapping back to looking at the past rather than looking forward in the now. So deep feelings came up seemingly out of nowhere and pushed a lot of people over the edge emotionally, so that the mind is like, what the fuck just happened? Why am I feeling like this suddenly? I thought I was over this. I thought I'd left this behind. And it seems to me that what it is in this unfolding process of healing, there's the bringing up of trauma, the post-traumatic complex traumas of this is what happened in the past suddenly recurring. The restlessness of mental toing and froing, trying to figure out and trying to fix the past. And the negative prophecy spells of thou shalt not is exactly what one does. Tripping ourselves up with old tripwires. So the way I look at it is that every time the old traumas come up, it's the script. And if one is the author of one's own life, it's up to one's ability to see what's happening in the scenario and to be able to rewrite an ending, rewrite the next chapter, rewrite some other way of how things used to go. Sort of, these things keep happening to me can become, these things used to keep happening to me, and then I realize something about myself and the world that allow me to see a way forward. To see a different outcome from the same old scenarios. And so I had an analogy of when one gets a heavy blow to one's forearm and the bone breaks. One goes to a doctor, or one goes to a healer, or one is isolated and has to fix it all on one's own. So one makes a splint and tries to reset the break. But if resetting the bone doesn't work properly, then there remains hairline fractures. Things are still out of alignment. Months and years might go by, and the thing never fully heals. And so the analogy is, the reality is, it's necessary to re-break the bone. Re-break it and reset it, and this time try and set it properly. And then this time it will finally heal. So that analogy makes sense psychologically for our emotional wounds, of our traumatized pasts, of our early childhood scenarios, where we picked up on vibrations and feelings of what was going on with our parents and our siblings and our families in our societies. There's a lot of childhood issues recurring, maybe different people acting out the same roles. So it's good to take a break every now and then. And in the bigger picture, maybe that's what the Great Reset really represents. So I'm processing a lot these days about all the conspiracy theorists, all the truthers, all the people who are pro-science or anti-science, pro-government, anti-science, pro-government, anti-government. But roughly it's a whole blame game industry at this stage. Characterizations, character assassinations, biased beliefs of false evidence appearing real scary, and the fears running away with people's minds, reflected in the mirror of the outside reality. The simple thing I'm processing about the idea that there is such a thing as the highest truth, and that the highest truth is love. Or to put it another way, the highest truth is whole. And anything less than the highest truth is off kilter. Anything less than the highest truth is not really true. Anything that's not really true is imagined. It's joining the dots but taking shortcuts where there could be curves. Anything less than the highest truth is a simulation projected onto the screen of the outer world. So where we see ourselves apart from everything else, that's less than the whole truth. It's the idea that we're individual beings who are separate from each other, denying the connections, denying the common ground, making our picket fences. This is my garden, not your garden. The walls that divide us. the walls of our glass houses. Might be able to see through them, but the division is there. One eye doesn't see the same as the other eye. We have a nose right in front of our eyes, and yet our innate intelligence screens out our noses. The same way as we screen out the blind spot. There's a blind spot in all of our perceptions, and we colour that in with our mind, with our imaginations. We fill in the blanks, we join the dots. We come up with theories about conspiracies or philosophies, often religious monstrosities. So what if it's the whole love that's invading every part of the whole? What if the overall fractal is changing, and therefore all our little versions of the fractal must change to come into alignment with what's changed in the whole? That means all of our lives have to change. How we're seeing things has to change. And if we don't change, then we'll stay stuck in our little simulation, stay stuck in our little fears, and keep believing our fears even though there is false evidence that our truth-seeking is only compounded through confirmation bias. That's what I'm thinking about at the minute. There's still that video that goes all the way back to, I don't know, something like the 16th of February or something like that. So a whole 4 weeks ago now. This video I recorded was back at the time when people were beginning to talk about Trump and Zelensky and Russia and all of that stuff. Maybe it was even a bit before that, when people were just on about Trump because he was doing so many things in his first weeks of his inauguration. And I'm not particularly talking about Trump, it was just back at that time. But I am talking about how people project war, take sides in imaginary wars. The war may be going on, but people's view of the war is imaginary, for we are not all living in the Middle East. We're not living in Kiev, not all of us. People are projecting their opinions about what they think is going on, which side is right and which side is wrong. I don't really know why it is that I haven't put up that video or the other few videos from beforehand, except I do know that back in January and February I was writing pretty profound stuff that I was happy with. It's not perfect stuff, and it all trails off into unfinished bits. I might write for a few hours, but then inevitably one has to break the concentration to go and eat food, walk the dog, take care of children, take care of oneself. But I really felt a need to not write something and then publish it, because I was aware of the need for feedback, the dopamine hit of the Skinner box, of the ant computer, the need for recognition. I was aware deep down in myself that writing stuff in order to get energy from other people is not really where I want to be coming from. That writing stuff with the idea that I know the type of people who are going to read it, who are the same people who generally read my stuff, which is maybe a few dozen people, for whom I presume my stuff confirms their bias. And so they like to read what I'm writing, because while I may push the envelope around a little bit with my letters, roughly the people who like reading my stuff, they like reading it because it confirms their bias. They're already thinking along these lines anyway. So it's not really achieving much to share with people who are already thinking this way, except to gain compliments and to fear criticism. Because there's one thing about humans: we like to read stuff that agrees with what we already think, and we like to point out where there's a little bit of difference. And that pointing out can come across as criticism. and can really ruin the taste of the dopamine hits. So I just had to sort that issue out in myself, to erase some of the innate programming of the internet, that to share one's thoughts, to try to share truths with the internet and social media, that's to post content. But I find the funny rhyme in a post-truth world, where what we're posting isn't actually the truth. It's largely off kilter. At most, it's one's personal truth, which is really an opinion. So in a post-truth world, we're all posting our opinion as if it was truth. And what we're posting isn't the truth. It's an opinion. And we seek to wake up other people as if we're awake and everyone else is dreaming. And if we could just wake up enough people, then that would overthrow the government and fix everything. And impatients are impatient, as in the patients of the insane asylums are very impatient to be free of the system that keeps us incarcerated. And the thing we're incarcerated in is our bodies. And even though we get let out of the prison every single night when we sleep, we get freed from the incarceration of our own minds. We get to dream freely, even if those dreams appear as nightmares. It's all processing the trauma if it's coming out as a nightmare. So I'm patient. I'm patient for a long time. Patient to realise that whatever the process is that's healing all the trauma that's ever been throughout existence in what we call the past, when viewed from our linear time frame, I feel a full faith these days through all my thinking about philosophy, thinking about what is the highest truth. Going back over all these little earworms I have in my mind from my own poetry. Little lines that stick out every now and then and remind me of thoughts I thought before. One of those is that truth is the highest form of communication, and that trust is the fastest form of communication. And so I trust. I trust in formation. I trust in truth. I trust that although I may not perceive the whole truth, with dedication and openness, the whole truth wishes to communicate with all of its parts. And I sense an inevitability that has allowed me to find peace between all my own constituent parts, in my inner constitution of my state of mind, in my incarnation. So my words rhyme too much. In my own self-criticism, I tend to think that it's infuriating for other people to some degree to have to struggle to read what I mean when I take the words apart and stick apostrophes in the middle of words, stitching words in different ways to how people have been taught to spell, as if an incantation has only one proper way to be incanted. So that's the process of these last few months, is to just allow myself to write freely, to allow the complexity and simplicity to be interspersed. A mix between prose and poetry is like the mix of the analytical mind and the feeling mind, the rational mind and the irrational mind. They are the two halves of the hourglass, and the writing is like the sand trickling through the aperture of the pupil of mine own eyes. Anyway, I intend to publish this 40-odd minute video, which is actually talking about cells and biology and the mind, and the collective mind, and the research of some scientists who I have a lot of time for and have invested a lot of time listening to what they're saying and learning what they've learned and expanding my horizons to be able to accept some things that I had found unacceptable regarding words like transhumanism, of otherworldly intelligences, the technological equivalent to what I understand about fairies that most people find so hard to understand about the mortal life and the immortal realm beyond time, beyond space. So it is a good video, and I've listened to it 2 or 3, maybe 4 times now, and yet I haven't found the time to follow through with simply posting it. So I'll post this one and I'll post that one, and although they're a month apart with some other videos in between, on the screen they'll seem like they happened one after the other, because appearances can provide false evidence. Bye now.